What if oxygen disappeared from Earth for 5 seconds? You're standing on a New York City street, sunny afternoon. You're sipping coffee, checking your phone. Then, the sky turns black, not gradually, not like a storm, instantly. And in the same millisecond, every single human being on Earth feels invisible hands close around their lungs. Not because they stopped breathing, they're trying to breathe, desperately. But the air they're pulling in isn't giving them anything. In 0.3 seconds, the brain detects the anomaly. In 1 second, muscles begin to fail. In 5 seconds, it ends, and the real nightmare begins. Second 1. A pilot over the Atlantic leans forward as every instrument on his Boeing 747 goes dark. The engines don't sputter, they simply stop. Because aviation turbines burn oxygen to combust jet fuel. No oxygen means no combustion. No combustion means no thrust. At this exact moment, there are roughly 10,000 commercial aircraft in the sky worldwide. In 1 second, every single one of them becomes a metal glider. Second 2. On Interstate 95, a driver going 70 miles per hour watches his engine cut dead. His power steering goes with it. He becomes a passenger. But it's not just him. It's 1.4 billion cars worldwide. Every internal combustion engine on Earth ceases simultaneously. On highways, on bridges, in tunnels, at intersections. Second 3. In Tokyo, a welder watches his arc torch go cold. In Texas, inside a massive oil refinery, something more dangerous begins. Every combustion-dependent process inside the reactors cuts off incorrectly. Pressure begins building in places it was never designed to accumulate. Second 4. The human body hasn't died. We can hold our breath for minutes, but every cell is already screaming. Your blood, saturated with carbon dioxide, cannot exchange gases. Your heart rate spikes. Your pupils dilate to maximum. And then, something strange happens to the sky above every person on Earth. It goes black, not dark blue, black, like outer space, because the blue color of our sky is caused by the scattering of sunlight off oxygen molecules in the atmosphere. Remove the oxygen molecules, remove the blue. Earth's sky looks like the moon's. Second 5. Oxygen returns. Every human on Earth takes the deepest, most desperate breath of their life in perfect unison. 8 billion people. 1 breath, 1 second. But the world they exhale into is already broken. Most people think of oxygen as simply the thing we breathe. But oxygen is the architectural foundation of the reality we inhabit. Oxygen makes up 21% of our atmosphere. But it also makes up 46% of the Earth's crust, locked inside rocks and minerals as oxides. It's in water as H2O. It's in glass as SiO2. It's in concrete. It's in every living cell on the planet. So here's the critical scientific point of this entire video. We are not talking about all oxygen disappearing. We are talking specifically about molecular O2, the breathable, reactive form, vanishing from the air for 5 seconds. The oxygen in rocks, water, and cells stays put, and even that limited scenario produces 5 catastrophic effects simultaneously. Effect 1, all combustion stops. Any fire, from a birthday candle to a jet engine to a coal power plant furnace, requires a continuous supply of O2 to sustain oxidation. Without it, the reaction halts in milliseconds. Effect 2. The sky turns black. This is actual optical physics, not metaphor. Rayleigh scattering of sunlight off atmospheric molecules creates our blue sky. Remove O2 molecules and the sky becomes dark, near black in the daytime. Effect 3. Ultraviolet radiation burns exposed skin. The ozone layer, O3, that normally absorbs UVB and UVC radiation, ceases to exist the moment molecular oxygen vanishes. Exposed skin receives an instantaneous sunburn in 5 seconds, equivalent to standing under a UV lamp with no protection. Effect 4. Water survives. The oxygen in H2O is chemically bonded at the molecular level. It is not free molecular O2. Oceans, rivers, and lakes remain intact. This is crucial for survival. Effect 5. Atmospheric pressure drops 21%. Its sudden removal is equivalent to being instantly teleported to 7,000 feet above sea level. For anyone in a sealed, pressurized environment, airplane cabins, submarines, the pressure differential becomes dangerous. Eardrums rupture, windows shatter outward, oxygen returns, and the first thing every human being on Earth experiences is the most violent, desperate breath of their life. For most people, just uncomfortable, disorienting, terrifying. For millions, it's the last breath they take. Here's why. When pressure dropped 21% in 1 second, the body began adapting. Blood chemistry shifted, gas ratios and tissues changed. When oxygen slams back and pressure returns to normal, those adaptations reverse violently. Think of a deep sea diver ascending too fast. Decompression sickness, nitrogen bubbles forming in the blood. Except this happens to every person on Earth, simultaneously. But the more immediate horror is coming from somewhere else entirely. Remember those oil refineries, the chemical plants, the steel mills? All of them stopped mid-process when oxygen vanished, with massive amounts of compressed, heated, unstable gases trapped inside their systems. Now oxygen is back, and it finds the gases, and it finds the heat, and it finds the pressure. Houston, Texas, 7 seconds after the event, the first explosion is heard 25 miles away, then the second, then the third. Industrial zones across the planet begin chain reacting like dominoes. Petrochemical plants, metal smelters, power generation facilities. The sky over dozens of cities turns orange. But there is something even more insidious happening that no one sees in the first moments. Metal. Every piece of exposed iron, steel, and aluminum on the planet has just had its protective oxide layers stripped away. In normal conditions, iron forms Fe2O3, rust. But most industrial metals are treated so their oxide coating is protective, not corrosive. Aluminum, for instance, develops a microscopically thin layer of Al2O3 that makes it effectively immortal in ordinary environments. Without oxygen, it vanished in milliseconds. And now that oxygen is back, it rushes to bond with every naked metal surface on Earth simultaneously. Bridges, skyscrapers, railroad tracks, the steel frame of every building constructed in the last century. Engineers who study this event will later call it flash oxidation, a process that normally takes years compressed into hours. And in some cases, where the newly exposed metal is particularly reactive, the oxidation doesn't just happen rapidly. It ignites. Metal burns. Cities begin to groan. This sounds like science fiction, but it is pure, straightforward chemistry. When iron meets oxygen in the presence of moisture, it forms Fe2O3. Iron oxide. Red rust. Destructive. But most metals used in modern construction are deliberately passivated, meaning their outer oxide layer is dense, adherent, and self-limiting. For aluminum, the Al2O3 layer is so stable it effectively makes the metal immortal in ordinary environments. This is why airplane fuselages don't rust. In 5 seconds without oxygen, this entire protective system is erased across every surface simultaneously. When O2 returns, it encounters the most reactive situation possible, freshly exposed metal at global scale. The technical term for what happens next is passivation shock. In laboratory conditions, sudden re-exposure of deoxygenated metal surfaces to atmospheric O2 can generate enough heat to self-ignite thin metal samples. You can see this yourself with steel wool and a 9-volt battery. But on the morning after the 5-second event, it happens everywhere. Railroad tracks in Siberia, bridge cables in New York, steel reinforcement inside concrete buildings. Engineers will spend the next decade assessing every bridge, every skyscraper, every railway ever built. 1 hour after the event, humanity is beginning to understand what happened. The word event is already capitalizing itself in news broadcasts, a linguistic signal that something has joined the category of before and after moments in history. Aviation is paralyzed. not because all planes crashed. The majority of pilots had time to execute emergency glide protocols in those 5 seconds. But no airline on Earth can certify that the engines which survived an abrupt cutoff are safe to operate. Every commercial aircraft worldwide is grounded pending emergency inspections. 10 million passengers are stranded. Power stations that run on combustion, coal, natural gas, diesel backup generators require emergency shutdown and inspection. Nuclear plants are a different story. Fission doesn't need oxygen, but their cooling systems, their backup generators, their instrumentation, all combustion-dependent components failed during the event. Several reactors begin precautionary shutdowns. Rolling blackouts begin across the American Southeast, then sweep into Europe. People in 47 major cities lose power within 6 hours. Then the strangest report comes from the geological community. Seismographs on every continent recorded microtremors at the exact moment of the event. Tiny, precise, simultaneous. As if the planet itself, whose crust is 46% oxygen by atomic composition, briefly flinched. Scientists will argue for decades whether this was coincidence, resonance, or something we don't yet have a framework to understand. The UN Security Council holds an emergency session at 11 hours post-event. But the agenda item is unprecedented. Not who caused this, no one caused it. Not how do we stop it, no one has any idea. The actual agenda item is 3 words. What just happened? Hospitals are overwhelmed, not from oxygen deprivation. Most people recovered within seconds, but from secondary causes. Car accidents from the simultaneous engine failures, industrial explosion injuries, cardiac events triggered by sudden terror, and pressure differential damage, ruptured eardrums, stress fractures in bones, and in severe cases, air embolisms in people who were at altitude or under pressure at the moment of the event. At 24 hours post-event, the first verified casualty count is released. Approximately 2.1 million dead. From aviation accidents, 340,000. Industrial explosions, 480,000. Traffic accidents, 560,000. Cardiac events and stress-related deaths, 290,000. Pressure differential injuries, 180,000. Other causes, the remainder. For comparison, World War I killed 20 million over 4 years. 5 seconds killed 2 million. And then a journalist at a White House press conference asks the question that will haunt every government on Earth. What if it happens again? The world, 12 months after the event, looks different in ways both visible and invisible. Aviation undergoes the most rapid technological revolution in its 120-year history. Electric aircraft, already in development but considered decades away from commercial viability, receive emergency funding from 34 governments simultaneously. The motivation is brutally simple. Electric motors don't need oxygen to combust. They run on stored electrons. Every engineering standard on Earth is rewritten. New oxygen interruption protocols are mandated for all metal structures, additional layers of passive protection, redundant oxide maintenance systems, real-time surface monitoring sensors. The construction industry experiences a financial shock second only to the insurance industry. Green energy receives what years of climate negotiation couldn't deliver: unlimited political will and unlimited capital. Because the fundamental threat isn't aesthetics or weather patterns anymore. Every fossil fuel plant on Earth is now classified as a Category 1 infrastructure vulnerability in the event of a repeat occurrence. Investment in renewables increases by 1,900% in the 18 months post-event. A new clinical diagnosis enters the medical literature: O2 anxiety disorder, defined as persistent, intrusive fear that atmospheric oxygen will disappear again. Sales of home oxygen concentrators increase 4,000%. Air quality monitoring apps become the most downloaded software category globally, surpassing social media. And then, unexpectedly, something remarkable emerges from the wreckage. For the first time in recorded history, every nation on Earth has experienced the exact same trauma simultaneously. Not a war, not a pandemic, which spread unevenly, not a financial crisis, which affected some more than others. The same 5 seconds, everywhere, at once. The event becomes the foundation of the first genuinely global treaty in history, not about nuclear weapons, not about carbon, but about collective infrastructure resilience. Every nation agrees to maintain standards that would minimize casualties if the event repeats. For the first time, human civilization stops being a metaphor and becomes an actual coordinated entity with shared vulnerability protocols. Philosophers call it the O2 paradox. The most terrifying 5 seconds in human history created the first authentic sense of global solidarity. Possible, the most frightening 5 seconds in history saved the planet. You just took a breath. Probably didn't notice. 500 million years ago, Earth had no molecular oxygen whatsoever. The first photosynthetic organisms, cyanobacteria, began producing it as a waste product of their metabolism. For the life that existed before them, this oxygen was a poison. It destroyed their chemistry, their cell membranes, their entire biological framework. This event is called the Great Oxidation Event, sometimes the oxygen catastrophe. We are the descendants of the organisms that survived by adapting to that catastrophe. We didn't just tolerate oxygen, we built an entire civilization around our absolute, total, non-negotiable dependence on it. Every combustion engine you've ever driven, every steel bridge you've crossed, every time you've looked up at a blue sky, every breath, every single breath since the moment you were born. All of it runs on 21% of the atmosphere, an invisible gas that we never think about. Until now. Take a breath. Just once. Notice it. Thanks for watching, and follow us for next What If video.